I was not supposed to be alone. You don't know yourself until you're stuck with yourself. Like, I would wake up, look at myself in the mirror. Sometimes I'd feel like the strongest woman in the world. Then other times I'm like, girl, pick yourself up. The grass isn't greener on the other side. It's greener where you water it. You're gonna have to skip on a couple of meals outside to earn that money for your bills back. About 6 months into moving in, I experienced a lot of bouts of loneliness. These are made by Dibujo Labs. Okay. Emil, I think his name's Emil. I'm gonna put the right, I'm going to credit the artists all on screen, like right now. All amazing, by the way. I love buying art at conventions. And sorry about my camera moving. I'm so excited. But all right, we're gonna do this a little different. First of all, my glasses are on. Okay, I have a refraction problem and it only really activates at night. So I'm sorry, y'all. The glare and I, we're friends. Okay, we're friends. Second, thank you so much for all the love and support that you put into my last videos, especially the first one about moving out. A lot of my friends reached out and said, Ricky, thank you so much for talking about this. I feel like I'm going to remember this for the next time I decide to move into a new place. And 2 people brought this up, which is a lot of people. That's like 10% of you. 2 people reached out and said, Ricky, could you talk about the emotional part of moving out? And let me tell you, girl, say no more. Say no more. That is probably one of the biggest parts of moving out. Moving out is literally 90% your emotions and 10% all the other work that you put in to keep it stable. That's a really good idea. Let's do it. Hey, it's Ricky A, and here's the emotional part of moving out. I'm gonna do this kind of podcast style, but also you're gonna notice it get darker as the video goes because it's like 6 p.m. on a Friday night. So yeah, this is how I spend my weekends, guys. Get used to it. It's been a year since I moved out and a lot has happened since then, but also a lot happened to get me here. I was not supposed to be alone. Moving out alone was not a part of the plan. I had planned to live alone for maybe close to a year with my then boyfriend, now ex. And it was a really long process. It wasn't one big sprint. It took me about a year of planning, scheming, bamboozling, checking online until eventually I ended up with a signed lease and an empty space all to myself. Special thanks to people at work. So I would have never landed this place if I hadn't started my new job. So given my context, there's sort of a lot of emotional baggage there. You're watching a healed Ricky right now, okay? When I first moved in, it was a lot of different emotions. But let me tell you off the bat, you don't know yourself until you're stuck with yourself. Like, I thought I knew me until I was stuck with me. I would wake up, look at myself in the mirror. Sometimes I'd feel like the strongest woman in the world. Then other times I'm like, girl, pick yourself up. Pick yourself up. What are you doing crying over this spoiled milk? And you know exactly what I mean. You know exactly what I mean. Like, this was not a part of the plan, but it's one of the best things that's happened to me. So, no regrets. So, on the emotional part of moving out, I'm gonna try and make some bullet points here. I've got a couple here, but in terms of talking about them, I'm gonna just make it like podcasty. First of all, choosing to live alone is a bold statement. Get ready to defend it. I live in the Philippines, as do hopefully most of you watching this. But if you're like me and you come from a conservative country, choosing to live alone is a really bold choice. at least here in the Philippines, there's this huge culture around staying with your family for as long as possible. You don't move out until you get married, and building community. And moving out doesn't exactly, especially to live alone, doesn't exactly like fit in that picture. The reason I say to get ready to defend it is because it's a bold choice that will impact everything. Living alone is costly. Physically keeping the place tidy might keep you from hanging out with other people, and then spending on rent and bills. Well, if you're spending on all of that, you might not have as much money to spend on hanging out with people outside. And then mentally staying on top of everything, your appointments, your errands. And then on top of that, you put hangouts, you might want to cut down on the part that you can control, which is all of that, but also mostly hanging out with people. That's how I prioritize. Maybe you're better. Okay, maybe you're better. And if you are, that's good. Since it's going to cost you a lot of resources to live alone and to move out, a lot of people are going to miss you. Or you're going to have a totally different schedule, totally different priorities and commitments. And explaining that to people, in the interest of privacy and your own life, you don't really have to, but now that it affects so much of your life, you have no choice but to. In my experience, I chose to live alone because I wanted to flourish and have a space all to myself. I grew up in the same household as my family for the longest time, and we frequently lived in relatively small spaces. And that did mean sharing my space with my sisters a lot. And that is great for your mental health if you have siblings, but when it comes to individualism and decorating a space, you're a little limited in that department. I can't hang art on my walls unless we all agree with it, or unless that's a wall that I face when I sleep, because that means my other sisters don't face it when they sleep. It's my wall. But instead of one wall for me now, I have all 4 walls to myself. And that does wonders for individualism, like for knowing myself. Since this ate into my commitments a lot, people were 50-50 when they found out that I moved out. And my only advice for that is this: people are both excited by and afraid of the things they don't know. So when they come at you with judgment, like they think, oh, so you decided to move out. There's a little similarity between that and, oh, you decided to move out. It's just that people are both concerned and happy for you. Like, that's a pretty good default mindset to come into this with. Also, having a strong reason for moving out is so important when you start, because as you progress with having lived alone, it's really going to test whether that reason holds up. So for me, I wanted to flourish. Like, I wanted to really understand who I was as a person on my own. And I feel like I got that. The biggest thing living alone taught me is that I'm an ambivert. I love hanging out with people. My social battery is so high, but at the same time, I love to pare it back. It's high energy for a short period, and then once it comes down, I gotta set the walls, people. I gotta set the walls. Give me some time, I'll recharge, and I'll be right back. And I think what really proved that is that there was 1 month where I track everything with stickers. And in this 1 month, my friend's sticker only showed up twice. I can see my friends twice a month and I'd be okay with it. Like, I don't know about you people. That's a very low amount for an extrovert, okay? That's coming from somebody who was a extrovert for like the longest time. Everybody's got their reasons for moving out and for living alone, but more or less, as long as you know why you're doing it, nothing else matters. It forces you to see the grass for what it is and water it greener. Now, I know that sounds kind of vague, but hear me out on this. When you're still living with family or with loved ones, there's this predisposition towards comfort and stability because you already know what the routine is like in your household. And after some time, you might think, well, you know what would be better than this? If I was alone. It's this, the grass is greener on the other side mindset. But, while that's partially true, it's not necessarily true. Without your parents, siblings, loved ones, or roommates around, you're forced to face home building alone. And that includes the pretty, home decoration, housewarming parties, cooking yourself dinner, and the ugly, paying bills, cleaning up after yourself and your guests, cooking yourself dinner. The grass isn't greener on the other side. It's greener where you water it. So you better put in the work to keep that green, okay? Speaking of putting in the work, living alone requires so much commitment and discipline. I've hauled a lot of heavy groceries up and down stairs, in and out of cars, across the highway on my own. I have done laundry every 2 weeks to 3 weeks. Whether I like it or not, I only skip if I really can't, but I have to, because if I don't, it stinks up the place, okay? And I have gotten every type of sick. I've gotten the common cold, I've gotten the flu, I've gotten extreme food poisoning from eating raw oysters. Okay, don't ask. Worst time of my life living alone. And by the way, when I was sick, I've had to drink the meds, take care of myself, get work done, and remember to eat 3 meals a day on top of trying to get better. Okay? That's a hard task. When you live alone, you are the only one who's going to save yourself. That sounds kind of harsh, but like, it's the most accurate way to put it. Every choice you make when you live alone has a huge bearing on your life. As simple as getting up in the morning, or as complicated as pushing through with that dentist appointment that you scheduled 2 months ago. That's going to have a huge butterfly effect on the rest of your day, on the rest of your week, and that's just the reality of it. Whether you consider yourself disciplined or not, living alone is going to whip you into shape. Like, it's going to teach you to be disciplined, or it's going to test your idea of your own discipline. Living alone is also perfect for building character. For example, you might buy furniture that's just like a centimeter too big for the place that you meant to put it. Huge hassle, by the way. Or maybe it doesn't come in the right color. Happened to me. I don't have a choice. I bought that shoe rack. Or maybe you have a habit of shopping. And maybe you spent that bill and rent money on buying something you definitely should not have. Now, happens to me on a small scale. A little guilty of this, but everybody goes through it. It happens to the best of us. Sometimes your choices won't work out, and you're gonna have to sit with those very real consequences. You're gonna have to live with that slightly big shoe rack, or that wrong color of shoe rack, or you're gonna have to skip on a couple of meals outside to earn that money for your bills back. It's not going to magically show up again. My older sister moved out before I did, so whenever things like that happen to me, I always run to her for advice, and she loves this one. She loves this one. Charge it to experience. When you make mistakes while you move out or live alone, it's going to feel like you've wasted time and money doing them, but one thing you do earn is experience. You're going to learn not to do that again in the future. And if that's any comfort, sometimes that's all you really need. You'll learn, and that's still something. And you might be living alone, but you're never totally alone. When I first moved in, I experienced a lot of bouts of loneliness. I'm a person with very few friends. I like to think I can count them on my hands, but before taking this video, I realized they're just a little past that. Yeah, I have like maybe 12 the people I can really trust. But about 6 months into moving in, I experienced a lot of bouts of loneliness. So thing is, like I said, it costs a lot of time, money, and energy to move out and to live alone, which means you kind of have to be very deliberate and intentional about how you spend time with people and how often. But a lot of my friends were, and still are, getting into a lot of outdoor activities. So that's hiking, bouldering, cycling, flea market shopping. And these are all super fun hobbies to have, but they're also things with costly entry barriers. Buying hiking equipment is the equivalent of my bills for a month. So I really experienced loneliness a lot because I had to sit out a lot of my outdoor activities, or a lot of outdoor activity invitations for my friends. I had to be very intentional with the way that I spent time with them, which also meant saying no to some of these things a lot of times. But after a while, I did realize to enjoy my own company. I realized that I did enjoy it a lot. Like, there's some joy to be had in spending time outside alone or spending time indoors alone and people watching. Like, knowing there are other people spending their time alone in the same public space as you, in a cafe or in a mall. But I also realized whose company really matters to me. And my criteria for people that I hold dear now is these are people who I feel mentally healthy around. To me, that included my mom, my dad, my sisters, my friends from work, my best friend from college, and my best friend from high school. That's not a lot of people, but as you get older, the numbers get lower, but they also get fatter, if that makes sense. Like, your friend's no longer just one friend, they're one friend, but it's like a really big one. You know, that's their role in your life, and that's how important they are to you. And that's great. That's a great part about growing up. I mean, that being said, with all the commitments that living alone requires or entails, you have to be very deliberate with your time with others. I purposely go out on Sundays to see my family, and if I break that routine, future Ricky, I'm watching you. Or I send memes and reels to my friends on purpose because I know they're gonna laugh at it, not just because it's for me, but it's for them. And whether they react to that or not, you know, it's fine. Because another thing living alone taught me is that you are at the center of your world. And that goes for everybody else around you too. If it doesn't always work out, that's okay. You know, rejection's a part of the process. After all, what's community without a little bit of inconvenience? And that's the emotional part of living alone. I feel like I somewhat covered everything. It's a bit of an emotional process for me, and I hope it also becomes a cathartic healing experience for whoever is watching this and decides they want to live alone too. A big part of moving out is really emotional, and you really have to prepare yourself for that moment when you realize, you know what, it's time. It's time to go. Do you live alone, or do you want to live alone? Let me know in the comments and let's talk about it. Feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more of my young adult podcast episodes. I badly need to run for dinner now, but if there's anything you want me to talk about in the next episode, just feel free to hit me up. You can come and join me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!